Peace. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of the Five Playland. As always, I'm your five player. Wanted to make a video regarding the draft 2022 version of the New York Giants. And if you guys could tell, and naturally, I'm highly disappointed in how this draft went down. Um, a lot of the YouTube Giants pages or the New York media is like dick riding um how well the Giants did this draft, and they really didn't. They can't tell you with a straight face that anybody from rounds 2 through 6, outside of Beavers, who I actually liked, but rounds 2 through 6 were anything but potential. I don't like potential draft players. I like plug and play, solid guys, especially when you're on a shitty team. The Giants weren't picking fifth because of magic or because they didn't have the what do you call it, the leadership of Gettleman. That's what messed up. This draft, the I don't know what point I was making, but it was just a terrible draft. I don't like drafting for potential on a team that's like not good as is. You should be drafting for teams that aren't good, teams that are picking number 5 overall. You should be drafting people in the 5th round with the intention that they start. Now, the Giants hierarchy are telling you that a lot of these guys in the 3rd round may not start. Guys like Joshua Azidu, a guard who I liked, but a guard who probably would have been there in the 5th round. Wandel Robinson. I like Wandel Robinson, but he's more of a potential guy, and he's a guy that I would have taken in the 4th round too. There was no urgency there. Right after Wandel Robinson gets drafted, a guy who's leaps and bounds better, a guy who really does have potential, and who probably could have been the potential best receiver in this whole draft, John Mechie, had he not been injured, gets taken one pick after the Giants pick. Um, in addition to what a lot of people are saying, that Wandel Robinson plays a lot like Kadarius Toney, which I don't mind. I don't mind having two of the same type of receivers, provided that they're both good. But I thought that the Giants, this draft and many years, needed a guy that you could just throw the ball to and he'll pluck it out the air, like a really big guy. And there were actually two that went in this round: George Pickens and the guy from Cincinnati, that white or light skinned receiver, whatever you call it. But those guys went in the 50s. I think George Pickens, no, George Pickens went to a decent team. But both those receivers went in the 50s, and they both went back to back. Could the Giants have peeled back and picked up some capital and moved back? Possibly. Um, but I'm pretty sure they attempted to, and maybe they couldn't make a deal happen. But if that's the case, wide receiver isn't the biggest need on this team. Why not go double dip on the line, or when it's the biggest hole you have? Why reach for a guy who's in almost every board a 4th or 5th rounder in Wandel Robinson? It baffles me. And it's not like this is I'm watching the tape of Wandel Robinson as we speak, and I watched a lot of tape of Wandel Robinson. He just didn't fit that role for me. And he's nothing different than what the Giants already have, which isn't the biggest sin, but the Giants have a lot of holes as is, so it is a big sin. But Joshua Zito again, um, not a guy with great technique. The one good thing, if I could say any good things, it's that he doesn't bail on plays that he messes up, but he messes up a lot of plays. Um, he'll keep fighting. That's great, but the word in the street is that the Giants don't see him as an immediate starter. So why take him in the 3rd round? You should have guys who could supplant the glory of Shane Lemieux, and who I don't even think is a bad player. But you should have guys that should be popping right into that line in the third round. They were guys like that too. I mean, like I thought that they could have taken Nicholas Petit Ferrer. I don't know how you say his name as like a swing guy who could possibly play guard too. I mean, like even though he's big, but um, as far as potential goes, when you have Nicholas Petit Ferrer versus fucking Joshua Azidu, come on, man, it's not even close. And no giant dick pulling channel is gonna tell me otherwise, man. Like, because they'll be here 2 years later, like when these guys are all getting cut, um, saying how bad this draft is too. But I'm gonna get to the good afterwards too. I'll discuss the Kayvon Thibodeaux and Evan Neal at the end of this, but I'm more displaying my disappointment because this has more overall effect on the draft. The Giants had a decent amount of high picks, and actually, they didn't really have like that much capital. But they had like I mean, in the third round they were picking. I mean, second and third round they were picking pretty high. They could have done moves. They had two picks in the third round. I mean, it's kind of like oh, nah, didn't do it for me. But Cordell Flott is another player. I mean, like he's a nice player, but I mean, like could he have been had later on? I mean, were there better cornerbacks on the board, better safeties on the board? Um, to me, there were. The one guy, I mean, Daniel Bellinger, another one. I mean, like there were a ton better tight ends still on the board. I mean, I think Isaiah Likely might have been on the board still at this point. Who knows? But I was also pissed that the Giants didn't get Isaiah Likely, the second best tight end in this draft. I mean, like, and he kept dropping and dropping. But you also have Dane Belton, the safety from Iowa. I actually like Dane Belton. I think he's good. I think he plays smart. He's not very quick. So, for instance, if the ball's near the numbers, or if he was playing the middle of the field and he has to stretch out to the numbers, he's not going to get there really quick. But he does position himself really well. He plays well with his head on the swivel, and he's also pretty good blitzing. Um, More of like a rapping style. Like a lot of the guys that they took like aren't like those blow through tacklers. Like they're better like for that gang up style of ball, like where one guy initiates contact and hopefully his teammates clean it up. I think the Cordell Flott, in addition to Dane Belton, are those kind of players, but Dane Belton has a little bit more of the head on a swivel, heady kind of player. I like that. Um, you also had Daniel Bellinger. I already discussed him. Micah McFadden, another reach. Micah McFadden is not a good player, bro. Come on, man. That's an undrafted free agent type in my mind. I mean, like some people were really high on him, but based on like the talent that was still on the board, Micah McFadden shouldn't even be drafted. I think. I mean, you had Beavers go after him. Beavers, who I actually liked a lot. Um, I think Brandon Smith was still on the board. Like, if they wanted a linebacker, sure, Brandon Smith plays a little bit like Beavers, but Beavers and Brandon Smith are both kind of like captains of the teams in a sense in the defenses. To have two of those guys would have been ill, and they're both good coverage guys. Like, you don't need a I don't know, just Micah McFadden doesn't do anything like particularly well, and he does nothing better than Brandon Smith or fucking Beavers. So why not, just wait on that. DJ Davidson is okay. I mean, he's a little bit small though, and he plays kind of small. Um, and no, it's not that he's short, and I'm dissing him for that because I actually like my deep tackles to be a little bit on the shorter side, provided they could get push on the line. He's not really a guy that gets a lot of push on the line in my eyes. He does create some havoc if but that's more like on I don't know. He creates more havoc if you're trying to blitz up the middle. He could push one guy into another guy. He could push a linebacker into a defensive tackle, but he doesn't beat defensive tackles on his own a lot of times. He beats them with help. So I mean, like but it's a fifth round pick, so who cares? I did like that they added a little bit of depth at the defensive line, so that's important. Marcus McCathin, from the O lineman out of North Carolina, decent player at this spot. Um, they waited a little while to get their swing guy. Um, I think they should have done a little bit of a better job beefing up like some of the guard positions here. Like, but if you see a swing guy with potential, I mean, it's not the worst thing, and it's a fifth round pick. But I think that they should have been with a better swing guy like Petit Ferrer early on, or just I don't know. Just the draft to me. I mean, like it's the body of work altogether, and like this body of work didn't make a lot of sense. But then their last pick, Darion Beavers, I like Darion Beavers a lot. Um, I like my tall coverage linebackers. Um, I think that some people were sleeping on the Cincy players this year because Cincy, I mean, they play shitty teams and they had a lot of good players on the squad, but Darian Beavers on a really good defense was no worse than like the fourth player um, on a really, really good defense. But at times, there were a lot of times that I watched games and or Cincinnati games and where Darian Beavers was like the number one or two guy that day. He led the team in tackles like that day. Like so to get him in the sixth round, I mean that's awesome. He was honestly the only like prior after day two, he was the only Giants draft pick that I was or day two on. He was the only Giants draft pick that I was like, there's something to build with. But let me go to Kayvon Thibodeaux and Evan Neal. Kayvon Thibodeaux, I do like. I think he had the best first step out of all the defensive ends in this draft. And I think he'll pair well with our defensive line. I think there's a good chance that in 2 years he could be the best guy on the defensive line. I think that he does. Um, I think with his hand in the ground, he plays better than Lawrence Williams, or he has more potential than Lawrence Williams, and maybe even Dexter Lawrence. I think on the edge, I mean, it's a no-brainer. He has the best first step, and he's way better edge player than anybody the Giants got. But again, I mean, like he was the consensus number one overall, like for a year maybe or more, leading up to the draft. I mean, his stock did fall because of what people thought were attitude issues, but it's a no-brainer pick in a sense. I mean, they did need defensive end help, and he was just there. Evan Neal, the same thing. A lot of people were down on Evan Neal later on in the draft. I kind of like fell into that too, but no matter what, how you slice it, he was the best. He might be the best tackle in this draft. I like Icky more because Icky was probably. I mean, Icky was a real ill guard in North Carolina. In addition to playing a really good tackle, um, I think the better pick as far as linemen go here was had they had the opportunity to draft both. The better pick here was what for the Giants was Evan Neal. Like I think Evan Neal at right tackle would play really well. Like a lot of people are lacking on him. Like he's some sort of finesse player. No, Evan Neal's walks around like an asshole. Like which I need that from a right tackle especially. He walks around like he's jaded. Um, so I think he'd be good. Um, going into a team like the Giants and being told off the rip, no, you're not gonna be our left tackle. You're gonna be our right tackle. And worst case scenario, he's also another player like Icky, who played guard really well. And worst case scenario, you could plug him in at guard. Now, I think that both those picks, even though they were extreme layups, you got to give it an A. But there's a lot of Fs and Ds on the board. I mean, like the Darian Beavers, I'm gonna give that a B plus. But all these other players on the board, I don't care what the Giants' needs were because like each of these players that they picked after round two weren't like the most pressing need, like Wandel Robinson. They weren't dying for another Kadarius Toney um and there were no better players than that around in and around him at round two for them to pick and reach so much on a Wandel Robinson. All these other like I mean, so to me, you got to give that an F. Um, Same thing with Zilu. I mean, I'd probably grade that a F too. Fuck out of here. Cordell Flott, I give that a C. Daniel Bellinger, I give it I'm not like shitting on him because I actually do think he's okay, but I'm gonna give that a C minus. Micah McFadden, that's a F bomb for me. DJ Davidson, I give him a C plus there. Marcus McCathin, I mean, for the role they needed him and for him being at this spot in the draft, probably give him a C plus. And Darion Beavers, again, I give that a B plus, B plus, um, maybe an A based on where they picked him. But overall, I give this Giants draft maybe a D plus. Um, I'm a tough grader. I don't think anybody got an A draft. I'm a Jet fan too, and I don't think they got an A draft like a lot of the draft media are saying. The Ravens are the winners of this draft in my eyes. Um, Even more so than the Eagles. I think the Eagles um didn't pick as well as the Ravens did. But yeah, I give this a D plus. Maybe just a flat out D. The Giants suck. Um, oh, another thing too. I mean, I did want the Giants to pick up Malik Willis, but I saw the reason as to why the hierarchy that's in charge of the Giants right now didn't go that way. Because if they drafted a quarterback, they'd be locked in with him. I mean, like, and Daniel Jones is gonna suck. So if Daniel Jones gets hurt, like I mean, it's a 80% probability, or he stinks and gets benched, then you have Malik Willis taking on the reins and kind of getting thrown to the fire. And if he sucks, then the current coach and GM are kind of like on the clock. So I think I saw the reason as to why they didn't take a quarterback, but I think Malik Willis, like when he started dropping that low, I think it was worth the squeeze. But let me know what you guys think. But again, D plus at best. With that, I'm out. Peace.